Let's start with just getting the October 12th minutes out of the way. So if you could pull those up. The one thing I wanted, the one thing I wanted to say about them is that it says absent was David Cunha, and he's resigned. Did he send a formal letter of resignation in?
I
No?
don't think so. We can check. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. He's battling brain cancer. So I
Oh,
know he was stepping off the committees that he was on.
that's
So,
awful.
yeah. So
I'll check that.
that's the only, everything else was fine. Anyone have any comments, questions, or a motion on the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Second,
Thank you. Thank you, Steve and Sean. All right, to approve the minutes, Terry,
Yes.
Sean McDonald,
yes.
Steve Mello,
Yes.
Chris O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian O'Hare, Mary Way, okay,
I have to abstain. I don't think I was there. Sorry.
okay. And Mary Waite.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And myself, yes. All right, so in order to make some progress, since our last meeting, I attended that charter review webinar. I sent the webinar to you. I know some of you actually logged on that day. I'm hoping that you were able, it was a full hour, but I'm hoping you were able to look at the webinar. And then it also gave us some supporting documents. So in thinking about all of that and thinking about our need to be more focused, because I've really gotten that message loud and clear from lots of folks on the committee that we're doing a lot of spinning our wheels. I think we need to focus our charge to complete the work that we were given on the charter review. With that focus on making the changes, would go to town meeting, hopefully June 2023. Work on whatever the town meeting feels we need to massage for town meeting October 2023. It goes up to the state house. And then if we needed to have the voters approve it, then we are in line for the April 2024 election. That being said, once we finish this charge, there needs to be a bylaw review committee established and take a look at the bylaws, which is a separate charge. And then I think a third charge would be to look at a town government study committee that might be able to deal with even the number of town meeting members. Just the full, look at that, because that number seems to also have bogged us down. That being said, if you did get to view the webinar, Jeff Nutting, who was one of the presenters on the webinar, he is retired from Franklin, just one of the communities. I got in charge with Isabel, who organized that event, and asked her to forward to anyone on the committee a name of anyone interested who would like to work with our committee as we go forth to try to button this up. And Jeff is actually interested. So he's going to review some information, and I think, we can chat with him at a future meeting. But he's done charter review committees. His services are free. And I think it would just be someone who, can help us in a different way. So I'm presenting that information. I'm going to ask that after this meeting, that myself, Sean McGinnis, and Anthony meet with Jeff to talk further about that possibility. And at our next committee meeting, either have some information for you or have Jeff, to see if Jeff's available to meet with us then, or, move in that direction. If that works for this committee. Terry, I see you nodding your head. Do you have some thoughts?
Yes, I make a motion that we move forward with that plan. I think it's a great plan. I think that gentleman has a lot of experience and had a better understanding of what we need to do than the Collins Center. I think the Collins Center could be helpful maybe in the future doing something else. They obviously have good relationships with a lot of towns, but this guy took Franklin through a process that was a big change, and he seems to be very pragmatic. I didn't realize he was free. That's even better. That's just icing on the cake, I think. So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So Terry and Sean, can I get anyone else for input on that?
Yeah, I watched it. I thought it was very good. I like the female administrator too, but she probably has time constraints, I suspect.
She's currently still employed. I think
Yeah.
Jeff is retired, and that may be why Isabel suggested him.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, so I agree with Terry. I thought he was very good and very pragmatic and very much to the point with an opinion, which was good.
Steve?
I agree. I'm sorry, Sean. I saw that and I thought he was very succinct and he was very, he's a good presenter. And that will help, I think, not just us, but anybody else that's watching our videos understand what we're going through. I think that's a great thing.
I made it very clear to him that we are not charged with looking at our form of government. Our charge is to review this charter and clean it up. So I didn't, he's worked with a representative town meeting. He's worked with an open town meeting. He's worked with a town manager role with like a city council. So he's worked in all of those, but it's really, right now, it's the charter that we need to focus on. Mr. McDonald?
Yeah,
Did you have
as far as the bylaw committee is, the bylaw committee was called for. We didn't get anybody to reply.
Yeah,
I realize that, and I am happy to volunteer for the bylaw committee when I'm no
Oh
longer
my
doing
God,
this
you're going to
committee.
heaven, Heidi. That's what we call corporal work of mercy.
Well, after doing this and then looking
Wow.
at the bylaw, like I feel like I'm like looking at with a similar lens, but I know it needs to happen. So
So did anybody read that article that was submitted as backup to the presentation? There was an article published in something that talked about bylaws as a way to change. I don't know if I got the wording correctly, but to change government without changing the charter. Is that the intent of that article, I think?
the article I read seemed to be, I viewed it as more global, but some of the little pieces I found fascinating. The how many different forms of government in Massachusetts, and ironically, that town meeting and charters is a New England, kind of limited to New England at this
Yeah.
point, which I also found interesting.
And that goes back to European government.
Yeah,
systems.
very, very interesting.
But I think if any kind of change in form of government structure in the Commonwealth still has to be passed through the legislature.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's the thing. I was a bit confused. Well, I guess in point of fact, if it changes, well, I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm gonna read it again.
and we will refocus ourselves to our task at hand. And it was motioned and seconded, so I will ask for an oral vote for everyone for us to pursue a conversation with Jeff Nutting. So Heidi says yes. I'm just gonna go on my screen. Chris O'Neill,
Yes.
Steve Mello,
Yes,
Brian O'Hare,
Yes,
Sean McDonald,
Yes.
Terry Ham,
Yes.
Mary White.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. And Sean and Anthony, we will chat, hopefully right at the conclusion of this meeting. All
Brian,
right,
I did read that article, but I have to read it again to understand it. It did reference a different way of making some of the changes, but it's going to take me some time, even though it's only 2 pages. It makes a lot of references to general law. I'm going to have to read it again.
I also looked at the sample charters that they sent us from Auburn and Lexington. And I'm sorry, but I didn't think some of them were really very clear. So it'll be interesting, but I mean, maybe that's something, again, Jeff can assist us with. So today we were going to resume reviewing section 1 and 2. So this is going back a bit. Charter review, here we go.
Well, I just made some additional changes for the last meeting. So I
Okay.
actually put 1 and 2 back on just so we can hit those highlights. I came up with a definition of town website.
Anthony,
That's the
can you
first
share
one.
your screen and that way we can all see it?
No, I don't know how to do that, and I don't have it on. I have my desktop
2 computers.
here with
I get-
everything on it and my laptop for Zoom only. So nothing's on my laptop. Sorry.
Okay.
It's the last email I sent out though.
Oh, all right.
So if you just go to, I'm trying to move this thing along. We talk a lot, but we don't seem to
Yep.
make a lot of progress. So I did some, I made some executive decisions and you can say yay or nay. So for town website, I looked online and found some other options and this mirrors one that I found. And it simply says the information resource found at an internet address provided by the town. I think that was the best one I could find.
Actually, that sounds pretty global.
Meaning too broad or meaning,
No, meaning perfectly broad.
okay.
I'm
Right,
afraid
so
that anything we
So we
say
change it
that's
that
going
way.
to
Well,
be
yeah, my point was if
too
technology
specific.
changes,
right. Okay. So I'm thinking that
next-
this came in Anthony's October 11th email. Is that possible?
I don't know, I've sent a few, it's whatever my last one was.
That had an attachment. Maybe there's
Anthony, can you just say what the changes were in that last attachment from the previous?
I just added a definition for town website.
That's it?
Says the
That's the only
information
change?
resource found at an internet address provided by the town.
Okay.
So what are we, you're asking us to approve that? That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I think whether it's the Collins Center or this other guy or whoever we're using, we should get to, we're fairly long in this process and we should
Right.
get to a point, to say, let's make some decisions. And, you know, we're all not going to agree on stuff. That's become pretty clear to me. So I'm going to make some suggestions as we go along and you can vote them up or down. I'm not a member of the committee, so I can't make motions.
So in looking at that attachment, which if everybody has it pulled up, it's Article 1, Article 2. We had gotten through most of this. And I apologize, I'm not sure where we left off on.
Want me to send it again? I can send it right now if you want me to.
Did people find it? It's the October 10th or 11th email from Anthony.
I've got it.
So we left off on 2-12. So if we. And it was the availability of town officials at town meetings, participation in proceedings.
Yeah, I'm gonna resend my latest update anyway to everybody right now.
Okay,
So. You sent it.
Was there any change made in that section? I only see capitalizations and removal of the word notwithstanding.
instead of that any, he changed it to that. In the event that any town officer,
Which section are you on, Heidi? I'm sorry.
I'm still looking at 12. Let me just get, I'm gonna pull up the one you just sent so that we're all looking at the same thing.
If we're on 12.2, my comment was, it requires the chairman of every other multiple member body. My question was that, does that include the school committee? Because I'm not aware that in practice that happens. So do you want to include the school committee in that? Or do you want to, and maybe it does, I don't know. Does that, Mary? Do you guys come to town meeting?
Superintendent
If-
comes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but this says the chairman of every other multiple member body.
John Nunes is always there, so. He's a town meeting member.
Mary, you're on mute if you think you're talking.
I think it can just stay as it says, multiple member body and,
So that will include the school committee. I just
Right.
want to make sure, because there's
I
a
think
lot
we
of,
all are members. I'm not, at least I'm pretty sure. I think Chris Oliver is a member as well, but I know Kathleen, Shannon, myself, John are.
all right, so I will leave that in.
then in next, it's section 2-13. Under town meeting procedures, notice of meetings. Notices are to be sent by mail. That's copied word from the statute. So,
213? You mean 214?
14.
so sorry, 214B.
Yeah, and I put that in because last time I had a question about that, but I
Okay.
looked at the statute and that's language directly from the statute. So I questioned that because we were talking about other ways
Yeah.
of notifying, but if
I
that's. in
I
the-
do think that it will evolve over time. I did take a look at the Town of Fairhaven's website, and on their website, they do have an option for committee members to opt in or out to get things electronically. So, I mean, I know we're getting a new website, so maybe that's something that we'll have and it will kind of take care of itself. Our next thing is.
Is that
sorry.
something that needs to go in the charter, though, the ability to opt out of mailing? Or if it says shall mail, is the town still gonna be on the hook for mailing? Even when
Yes,
the
they will
people
be.
doesn't want it?
Yeah.
It'll need to be in the chart. Or we
Can it-
could
can
add
it
in
be in the
language
charter?
that says something to the effect of alternative means of service to be approved by the select board, something like that. So we. so we
Yeah,
have
I
some
think that's a good idea.
flexibility.
Can
We
a
have-
charter overrule state law?
Yeah, because yes, it can, in this sense. The state statute has a default procedure. We can change the procedure.
Okay.
That's the whole point of the home rule amendment.
And I think the state's getting away from sending paper.
So why don't I add language in then that says, or alternative means of notice approved by the select board.
Mhm.
Does everybody agree on that?
Mhm.
Yes. Then we have, the next thing is under D, Judge of Election and Qualification. Copied from the state.
Yeah, I thought that was odd too, so I had put in a
Yeah.
note, and I'm like, is this really legal? It seems odd to me, but I looked at the statute and the state has it in its statute. Nobody's challenged it, so whether it ultimately would uphold, I don't think we need to worry about it because it has
Mhm.
not been challenged. So I put those notes in so you would know that I'm clearing up basically some of the holes that we had put in.
And then in C, we have, or rather, sorry, E, shall give notice to all town meetings to the town meeting members and to the public. It does sound redundant, but
Is that, well, that was my question. Is this a separate? I'm not sure what that meant.
mhm.
It's in the same sentence as keep a journal. It seems redundant and unnecessary, but. Well, it's certainly redundant to the town meeting
Do you
members. I don't know if
think-
it's redundant to the members of the public, but it doesn't say how that. I just don't like vague stuff in there because I don't know what it
Right.
means.
Because it sounds like B is the notice of the meetings and this is what transpires during the meetings. Which we have talked about that
Right.
do we publish something after the town meeting for people to know how the town meeting, what were the results of town meeting?
Do we know, what do we do now, Sean? Do you know? What does Sarah do after she does the minutes?
She posts them on the website.
Okay,
We
So
don't,
I can
we don't
ju-
do a
I-
mailing to town meeting members with, the outcome.
right. So maybe we just say the clerk of the town meeting shall keep a journal. It's really minutes. She keeps minutes
Right,
of the town meeting and perform other functions. Said minutes shall be posted on the
Pub-
town website.
yeah. Maybe you can just say published.
I'd rather say
On the
where,
website. Okay,
we have a broad definition of website. Does that make sense to everybody?
mhm.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna push my luck here. Can we go back to the top of section 2.2-2? We talk and we talk and we talk and we talk and I was at town meeting a couple days ago where we had 150 people present. I will, once again, I don't think Sean McDowell, were you at that last meeting, Sean?
Yes.
Oh. Somebody wasn't that I thought might agree with me, but I think we should just say 20 per precinct. And that way we don't have to reallocate. If the precincts go down, the number goes down. If the precincts go up, the number goes up. That would leave us with 180 currently. We had 150 present the other night.
Well, it would have to be an even number because you're gonna have to have three 3-year terms. So it would be,
21 per precinct.
Well, I know we talked about this and at the last meeting I had said, like the state had recommended 240. And I went through all this, like, if we had 9 precincts, 20, and then 20.
Well, they
at
recommend a
home,
maximum of
and blah, blah,
240,
blah,
right?
blah, blah. Right, but what I'm gonna say, and I know you want to get this finished, is I'm gonna say that does bog us down, and let's keep it as a hold, and I'm gonna put it as a 2.2. This is, and let's see if this is on the hill we want to die on.
I told you I was pushing my luck.
You were pushing your luck, and I want to get through section 3, but I have put a big, huge target on 2.2, number of town meeting
Right.
members.
I mean, we've been doing this for 2 years. At some point, the committee should just make a decision. Win, lose, or draw, somebody should make a decision. We can talk and we can talk to other people all we want, but we know the town of Dartmouth and I think our last town meeting was pretty indicative.
I disagree.
That being
and I'm-
said, I will not talk about that again.
Do not mention it again.
Yeah.
And I think after the next election, November 8th, where we are having a precinct 3 will be voting at the university. That may give us some indication as to whether or not we will have more active members in that precinct. That being said, would everybody go to Article 3, Executive Branch elected? So 3-1A, elected town officials. And that's the Select Board, School Committee, Board of Assessors, Parks and Recreation Board, Board of Health, Board of Library Trustees, Planning Board, as well as Town Clerk and Town Moderator. All of that is still elected positions. And I think with our discussion before about boards which should be elected or appointed, this was the one thing that I thought maybe the Collins Center and maybe Jeff Nutting could have some insight onto, is how to define, which committees need to be appointed and which committees need to be elected, if they are a stream of revenue. But I know this is the thing, that's the piece of which of these are we electing? Or
I can tell you the ones that need to be elected are the select board, the school committee, the town moderator. I'm just going through the list here.
I think oddly it's library trustees as well.
Why do you think they need to be?
That
I
needs
think
to be cut
that's-
down.
Yes, but I think that's
And the
in,
housing authority. So beyond that,
oh, and we don't even
a
have,
lot of those are appointed positions. In other towns, and I've looked at a number of other charters which have been approved. So from a
The
legal
planning
perspective,
board doesn't have to be elected?
oh God, no.
And- No?
It's appointed more often than it is elected.
Hmm.
And it's usually a 3-year term versus a 5-year term.
so you said select board, school committee, board of assessors,
No, I didn't say
No.
board of assessors.
no, planning board,
Housing
Oh.
Authority.
housing authority. which we
Housing
didn't
Which,
have
but
listed.
that's not part of the charter. They're really not a town entity.
Right.
So
Town clerk and town moderator.
No, not town clerk.
but we went through that.
We had a vote.
Town meeting.
And they voted.
Yes, but that, things have changed. Although she was currently elected, she was initially appointed
Mm.
to fill a vacant position.
Right. So do you know, let me see if I can figure out what was, when it was amended by town meeting in October 18th, 2021, 2011, and then approved by voters April 3rd, 2012. How did that change?
What changed? Which change are you talking about?
Because it was
That-
amended in October 18th, 2011, but we don't know what the amendment was.
There were a number of amendments. None of them had to do with the board. The only boards we changed was we got rid of the cemetery commission and rolled it
Oh.
into the park board.
Okay, so,
There was no appetite back then to tackle this part.
okay,
But Sean can tell you that he's got. When you have an appointed position, you have more people show up to try to get it than when it's an elected position.
Yes.
Town clerk's website only goes to 2013.
Oh, what was removed was Cemetery Commission
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and Town Agent.
Yeah,
In the
that was-
2000 edition, those two are included in that section.
Yeah, that was a town agent that just really wasn't necessary.
I don't think we had the position filled, did we, Sean?
The last one I knew was Stan Frollo.
All right. So is it the recommendation of anyone on our committee to change any of these boards? I do think that there are people who may want to be a part of these committees that do not want to be politicians and run.
I agree. I mean, I'd like, and people that might have the expertise, it seems to me that, I mean, again, I can't speak, but, some, certainly the planning board and board of assessors, I mean, those require specific, I mean, everything requires specific skill sets, but it's a little to think of people running for I mean, again, I know it happens, but board of assessors, it seems that it should be appointed. Those, that's just.
And I think the same with Board of Health.
Mhm. Yeah.
I do know that there's someone that's stepping down and they want a physician to step up, but he doesn't want to have to go through
Right.
process.
Yeah.
I agree.
If we make a change from elected to appointed, I think we have to provide a means by which it's done, because we have people that have been elected for a term of years. So I think we would have to have a scheme, for lack of a better word, to step it down to appointed.
I agree.
Well, I mean, at some point in time, I mean, even if we do make the recommendation and it does get passed by town meeting, nothing's gonna happen until 2024. And that at some point in time, whoever is elected, since all these positions are non-paying, nobody's going to lose any money over it, number one. Number two, it would not preclude them from applying for the position as an appointed official.
Sean, can I ask, how is that process? Like, if someone does want to go for an appointed, do you like post it and then, you kind of have an application system? How does that usually work?
Generally, anytime that we have a position open on any kind of a board, it is posted on the website. We announce it at our meeting. We ask for letters of interest. Generally, I'll be honest, most of it is letters of interest, unless it's a specific targeted position. Now, if this was to happen to the Board of Health, we would ask for a background resume, because we would like to see somebody that has had some type of health related or inspectional qualifications. Not to say that, an auto mechanic can be a member of the Board of Health, but I would choose a physician over an auto mechanic. But yet I would also choose an auto mechanic to fix my automobile than a doctor. So, I mean, there's, you try to do it as far in planning board. That one would be a kind of a more interesting than not, because, who's to say, I don't know. I wouldn't want.
What if you have all these
How can I say this without getting
corporate
really in trouble?
builders that now get on planning board and want
Exactly.
some things changed in their favor?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, and Chris can attest to this, I mean, I would probably be very comfortable in saying Chris, for the first year on the planning board, was still kind of trying to wrap his head around what's going on as far as the processes, as far as, planning and all that. it takes a while to get into that wheelhouse. And generally, some of the old timers saying, well, you know, you need the first 4 years before somebody gets comfortable. I was never subscribed to that. I figured after a year, you should be up and running and everything should be fine, and your old hats. And you can see that in some of the discussions that were going on. You know, 3 years. I just think a 5-year term is kind of it's a long term, but it gets, you know, you get the experience very quickly, especially with the number of things coming up before, you know, for discussion.
Yeah, so when Chris was appointed, he was appointed, and I think he was one of at least 4 or 5 that put in their interest. Right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Sean?
I think
Yeah,
there
there
were two.
were
I think there were 2 others.
number of people. Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever there's an opening for an elected position, you see 1, sometimes 2. It seemed to me that it brought forth a lot more people, and they interviewed them, and there's some good candidates, and Chris rose to the top, and they chose him.
Yeah.
Right.
The only time we didn't get anybody for any kind of position is the bylaw committee.
Can I ask a question? Is this committee allowed to make recommendations in appointed versus elected or terms of
Yes.
office?
It's a
We are
change of
allowed to do
charter.
that?
It's
That's
not
not
a,
considered a
that's
change
not
in
a
government.
change in the form of government, no, it's not.
Okay,
Change in the form of government would be going to a town council, town manager form of government, for instance. That would be a change in the form of government. That's beyond the scope of this, the authority of this.
could we add if, as a recommendation, the select board has just started scheduling meetings with the different departments to ask, you know, what's going on, and could we add something like that into the charter to say that if it's an appointed board, it's expected that there will be a kind of a progress meeting or some kind of regular reporting on what they're doing to the select board?
I think that's a great idea. Or annual meeting, annual review or something. I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Even semi-annual. I just think for the select board, if you're appointing people to boards, they have goals, they have things they're supposed to accomplish. It would be good to hear for the public to hear, you know, what it is that they're accomplishing.
Mhm.
And I
Right.
also think it's going to be very difficult. I personally, my personal opinion is Parks and Rec, for example, should be appointed. I think it's going to be nearly impossible to get something like that put through. I think people feel like they're going to be losing power. So I think there needs to be a way to build in that it's not the reason, you know, I'm always thinking about why we're recommending a change. The recommendation for a change to appointing is for people to find people who have experience, right? And for people who want to serve but don't want to run. Those are 2 good reasons that really have nothing to do with power. So I think if that's an explanation for the recommendation, I think it makes sense.
Well,
I think anytime we make a change, we have to have an objective reason why we're changing it. It can't just be, and this is my problem with I'm not going to talk about it, but the number of town meeting members, my problem is we got a lot of opinions about it, but we don't really have data or, you know, rationale to say why, other than that the state says, but who cares? You know, the state.
Other than
says-
that 150 people who showed up last week.
No,
do have data.
I've
I'm
checked.
gonna
to
arm
see
wrestle
if-
you on this one, Teresa.
So we're not gonna go there, I know.
We're
but
not going
there-
there.
All
well,
right, sorry.
part of the other thing regarding appointed board is a little bit more accountability. You know, and that's what it is. I mean, but the problem with changing, the major problem with changing an elected board to an appointed board and having the select board appoint that board is the notion that the select board is trying to get too much power.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's really not true.
Right.
But yet, when somebody has a problem, they go to the select board and say, can you do something about this? And we say, no, we can't. That's not part of it. Well, why not? You're in charge of the town. No, we're not. And
You know,
that's,
Sean, if we
that's a
could go back,
reality.
if we could go back and list specific examples of how that, so the one thing I think about is Round Hill, for example, when the Conservation Commission worked on that for 10 years. And then we had, you know, somebody else, I know. So I just think if we had examples like that, one after the other, to say, this is why this recommendation is made, it would be helpful, but that means we have to come up with examples.
Oh,
I
well,
like you, I like
that-
your
That's a
idea
great
better, Terry.
example.
I like your idea better. I think you should focus. I agree with you because nobody raised any of this. Nobody followed through on this. It was raised by the Charter Commission last time. Nobody followed through on it because they thought it would be perceived as a power grab. It's not a power grab. I work with the select board. I can tell you, if there's anything, they don't do enough exercise of control. I say this, you know, I don't mean this as a criticism, Sean, over the other boards. They give the boards autonomy. They give appointed boards autonomy.
Well, I
Just look
do
at some of the
think-
appointed boards that are not afraid to bang their heads against the select. board. I think instead you focus on the fact that you get more interest, you get more qualified people who are not willing to run. Like you said, a doctor is a perfect example for the Board of Health. Doesn't want to go around knocking on doors or putting up signs. Last time we had a planning board opening, we had a lot more people put in for appointed versus unelected. I mean, use live examples of the past when this has happened and how often do we have a contested race? Very seldom.
I also think that when we look at appointing individuals, we do look at their record of service, how many meetings they have attended. So we can, you know, that can be a part of it as well, that people who are vested attend. So I'm going to go back to A and what
Excuse me,
Oh, sorry.
Heidi, I just want to say one thing. I think if you're going to start appointing people rather than electing them, I think the whole idea that Terry mentioned about having some sort of reporting to the select board quarterly or on a half-year basis on progress against objectives is a really good idea. I don't think you can increase, in my opinion, the number of appointed boards or whatever they are that are appointed unless you put in that responsibility for reporting.
Well, the select board's going to try it as we go forth with these workshops coming up with different boards and committees. So.
Well, I just don't
We'll
see
see
how
how
you
it
do it without, I mean, if you're gonna have appointed, you gotta have some kind of responsibility.
I will try to draft some language for the next meeting on that. I thought that was a great idea by Terry. I will try to draft some language. I'll circulate it and obviously no pride of authorship. Feel free to make changes to it or suggestions.
Mary
Thank you.
Lee,
I think that's a really good idea. Thank you.
So
Mary
I
Lee.
guess my question is too, is it seems to me that if, we're gonna, get this through town meeting, because I agree with it, I think these should be appointed, is we need to speak to the folks on these boards and see if we can get them, in concert, just, at least to that could be some pertinent examples of where they've hit roadblocks or challenges, and some, who are elected may want to retain it, but it would be good to talk to the members of the boards in some capacity to get their thoughts.
So
I
let me
think
ask you,
also-
Brian, you're on the FinCom, right? You're not
Yes,
just because
I am.
just
Yes,
because you're appointed, you're not, well, you're appointed by the moderator.
moderator, yeah.
Um,
Sorry, what
So
was your
if-
question?
no, I was gonna say,
If
you're
we-
not afraid to express your opinion just because you're appointed.
No, something I was,
Chris, what's your thoughts? I know you're an elected official. Are you looking at us saying, I'm not giving up my elected position?
Well, I can tell you firsthand experience. You're right, Anthony. I was appointed initially, and going back to Sean's comment about, how difficult a process it can be to go through the election, and it's a little painful, to be honest with you. I'm just not sure how you get charter review committee, make a change like this on multiple boards and bring it to town meeting. Do you do it all felt swoop, or do you have to separate it?
No.
Because there'll be some on Parks and Recreation that don't want it, others on the planning board that will agree to it, others that won't. How do you plan to get this through town
I
meeting?
would
I think
suggest
I
you
can-
do it. I would suggest you bundle it. Bundle that one section. We're gonna change these boards to elected boards, and then anybody, they could discuss anybody can make an amendment from town floor. But if you go one by one, you're gonna be tackling them one by one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
You're gonna have
also
the park-
think-
I suspect the Parks Board is gonna come up swinging. That's a-
I disagree. I think if we had a format when you put it forward that had a pro and con section for each thing we wanted to change, with examples like Terry suggested. This is something we do in FinCom when we give our letter on the coverage of on our agreement or disagreement with various articles for town meeting. And I think you could make a rationale on a per case basis, pro and con, and it's going to go to town meeting anyhow for approval. And whoever makes the stronger argument for pro and con, then I presume would get the majority of votes at town meeting and the changes would be made.
Chris makes a good point, Nick. We talked at the last meeting about, we're going to have to talk about this in the future because we won't have time today, but we talked about how do you present this to the town meeting, and we talked about having one section just be capitalization, grammar, current law, blah, 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 pretty much things that they don't, it's non-controversial. And then having another section, these are more substantial changes and why. I also think when we get to that point, we have to talk about education and how do we get this information out to people so that they can hear what Brian just said. These are the pros, these are the cons, this is why the recommendation was made, and not just having it, mailed to town meeting members. I think that's going to be, we're going to have to spend some time on that.
And I also think, Carrie, that we have the opportunity to speak to the boards that were going to be making these changes to and talk directly to
Yes.
them. How would
Right.
this
Good point.
benefit your board?
And I think bundling is probably, as I understand it was made, the comment was made, probably not a good idea because it's sort of all or nothing as opposed to the merits of individual changes on an item basis in the charter.
But if it goes to town meeting from the floor, someone could amend to remove a board from the proposed,
Oh, I mean, that's
But
what
I just
town
wanna
meeting is
go
all
back-
about. Fine
I
with
want to
me.
go back till we make sure we have this correct. So this will read elected town officials to be elected by the voters shall be members of a select board, and it has some random parenthesis there, a school committee. Planning, town clerk, town moderator. Are we removing Board of Assessors, Parks and Rec, Board of Health, Planning Board, and can we remove library trustees?
Who told you library trustees need to be elected?
No, that's in here. They are elected.
No, I know, but I thought.
I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like that was something I heard, which was like a weird
That's a
thing.
question for you as the attorney, right?
So we can
She's
look into,
asking, are there any limitations under the general laws of Massachusetts that would prohibit us from going from elected to appointed? You don't have the answer now, but I think that's something that you could research.
so we will separately look into this. So in this paragraph, there will be 4 boards that are elected and 5 that move to be appointed.
Now, the 5 that remain elected, 4 that remain elected, is that because of the mass law?
Well,
Okay.
it's select board, school committee, town clerk, and town moderator. Town clerk is the iffy one that it has been appointed, but that already went to a vote. And the people voted to continue to have it as an elected position.
That
So it
makes
doesn't
sense.
make sense to fight that one.
Right.
So
It's interesting, though, if you ask people why they voted, the people who voted to keep it elected, it was the reason that Sean McDonald just said, it was concern about a power grab. Even though there's no way that the select board could affect what the town clerk does, people don't believe it. They think somehow,
You can
And
have
the
a
pa-
populist, you can have a populist run for town clerk who doesn't have a clue what they're doing. That's a hugely
Right.
important job.
Yeah.
Hugely important. I mean, she runs the elections. I mean, just look what's going around in this country. It's crazy.
Mhm.
The position is
I
no
think you
get.
should try, I think you should,
It
I
is
think you
no
should try
gift.
again. I think that's an
I
important
do too.
position to be appointed.
I agree.
I mean, we had
Yeah.
somebody with no clue being the tax collector, and he walked away with some money from the town.
Right.
Mm.
And that's why it was changed. But those are the kinds
So
of
here's,
reasons I think that
so,
make,
so here's an example of the pro and con, because I think a lot of these things are offered up in a vacuum without any substantial information about why the change is recommended, like things like, someplace I saw in some of the documentation that of all the towns in Massachusetts, how many had elected clerks versus how many were appointed. And then in the pro and con section, you could put in something, the reason why you want to have it is some of the stuff that Anthony just mentioned, only in
Right.
more detail. And then you would have, it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And I would agree bringing it up again in any charter change submissions we're going to do going forward.
I do
Yeah,
too.
I can tell
agree
you,
with
Brian,
that.
we presented that information that you just said at the town meeting prior, when we had the article before on the town clerk. And it's
Yeah.
actually split almost 50-50 in the state, elected versus appointed.
Oh, is it?
But
Okay.
did
Well,
we-
but I'm
but did
also
we
saying,
pres-
as Anthony mentioned, maybe there's some other facts like the inviolability of elections going forward, that, you know, somebody has to know what they're doing, as opposed to getting somebody who has had no experience but is very popular and elected.
Mhm.
What if you get an election, what if you get an election denier running for town clerk?
Yeah, I mean.
Like you
so
have
look
running
at-
for secretaries of state all across the world.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, this is caught us unawares in terms of coming up with a bunch of different reasons why, but I bet you we could research it and find that there's a whole bunch of reasons why, along the
Yeah.
lines that Anthony mentioned, why it should be appointed rather than elected.
And I could see this section, when we're talking about these kinds of changes, being divided up among the 9 of us and asking different people to write different sections and bring them back, because that's a lot of work to do the pros and cons, but I think it's important. I'm not sure we talked about with the town clerk. I don't recall on the finance committee talking about somebody who could, you know, overturn the election, that could be a possibility. And I think that's something that would be good to bring up because it is a real thing that's happening.
Thought 5 years ago.
And
you
we
wouldn't
can't
even
be
thought about
buying any Dominion voting machine. As you know, those votes go to Venezuela. They
Yeah.
switch it over to the other candidate.
Be careful, you might get a libel, you might be
As a
sued for libel by Dominion if you say that.
I know, I know.
So moving down to Article 3-1, Section C, eligibility, which was to reword. The bottom line is that it says that no person shall hold simultaneously more than one such position elected. So you're elected to one position.
And yeah, and I
And
think
appointed.
what they meant by that is like, if you're a member of the select board and you serve on a committee that has one select board member, I think that's what that exception means. It just was badly worded, I thought. So I can take a shot at rewording that, or somebody else can. I was going to, but I ran out of steam, to be perfectly honest with you.
All right, well, I just put a thing that we need to reword that. In F,
Do you want the school? I mean, I think the school committee in many ways is looked at as an equal to the select board.
select board.
They're separate, separate parts of the government, if you will. Did you want to put an exclusion for the select board? This says that select board can call any of these people. Either town administrator or the select board can call them in.
I think, yes.
I think
Yeah,
the select board does. They do have those,
Yeah, but
meetings with
they don't
meetings.
order, they don't order them in, right? This says shall be subject to the call of the select board or the town administrator.
No, we're
They say,
invited.
Mary, wait, we want you here Monday at 5:30 sharp.
right? No, we're invited.
Right.
Well, but.
Sometimes
in
you
point
say
of
no.
fact-
You know, we
If
have
I
to be there,
recall
but yeah.
correctly, sometimes you say no.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well,
We're usually
Um,
there for budget, you know, going over
Yeah.
I'm
budget.
just throwing
Would-
that out there. Do you want them in there or not? I don't. I'm
Well,
not
this-
taking a
This would
position.
be
I'm
similar
just
to the
saying.
meetings that we're talking about, these workshop meetings that we're having with the various boards and committees.
Yeah.
This would fall under here.
I think I think you should put it in with that kind of language. I mean, it is part of the government.
I
The school
agree.
committee might
When I was
disagree.
interviewed by Melissa for the finance committee, that was one of the questions she asked me. If the select board asked for a meeting with the finance committee, what would you say? It seemed like a no-brainer to me, but I guess there had been a history of people saying no.
Yeah, well,
So,
we're under elected officials right now, though, so that will be under the appointed officials. Right now, we're under elected officials.
But I can't see the difference because you're all looking for the welfare of the town. And somebody's got to take a lead in going forward, and to require a meeting. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? There might be words exchanged.
Yep.
But I think somebody should be in charge of calling a meeting, and people should have to show up.
I agree.
They have separate budgets, the
Oh.
separate arms of the government, I guess. I don't know. Just,
Yeah.
Well, I think add it in, and we'll see if anyone has a huge issue with
Yeah.
it.
let's
well, I'm not
suppose-
adding it in. It's in there now. And it would, as it reads, it would include this.
It includes them.
Mhm.
It should,
I
didn't know
it
if
should
you wanted-
include the school board.
Mary?
You know, I think we come in again for the budget, so I guess it is like you know, the question of. I don't have a strong opinion. I mean, I think, you know, given the circumstances of where we are right now, you know, I think there haven't been issues where this has been you know, where I would say it's like there's a problem or anything like that. I mean, I think if you have the select board suddenly trying to define curriculum somehow, you know, that is not within there, or, you know, a specific
Right.
school policy, then you're running into, and they want to exert their control over school policy. But, you know, with that said, you know, the Indian, you know, was kind of started in the schools and then became a town issue. So it's, you know, I think right now, the way I think of it is that generally we're coming for budget. We do need to come before and explain our budget. Like that is, you know, because again, that goes to town meeting. So that makes sense to me, but, you know.
Right, but this says it can be at the call of the select board or the town administrator at all
Yeah.
reasonable times. for
I
discussion.
I think
Any
reasonable
matters
times
related
kind of
to
covers it though.
any
You
matters
kind of say
related to
this is
the respective
unreasonable.
offices.
I don't think it should be
Sean McDonald
limited.
doesn't like the fact that you are including, I'm using Sean, not Sean.
No, I
not
know.
Sean McDonald. Sean McGinnis doesn't, as a town administrator, or a new town administrator, doesn't like the fact that you're doing sex ed. He can call you in and say, I want you to come in and talk to me about doing sex ed.
He's the town administrator. He's not the select board.
But it does
It says
include town
or-
administrator
it says
here.
or
It
the
does
town
include town administrator.
She'll be
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
do think-
I'm torn on this one. I think I could bring it back to, you know, the school committee you know, for that. But I feel like I have at reasonable times. I guess who defines that? That's you know, again, for me, budget is a reasonable time.
Well, I'm
Talking about
thinking of,
sex ed is not.
I disagree. I mean, I think I disagree. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think somebody should be able to call people in to talk about policies. It's up to you because on the school board, you're independent anyhow. But I don't think it should be curtailed. If people want to, in government, have a concern and want to talk about whatever they want to talk about. I don't think the school board or anybody else should be allowed to say, no, I'm not coming because I don't feel like it.
We're not gonna have that issue with the current town administrator, so.
no.
But it doesn't.
But say we hire
Already
somebody,
implemented.
say.
It doesn't
say
matter
Sean
about the
grows old and
current.
gray And we hire somebody 20 years down the road who says, I don't like what the school committee's doing, I'm gonna call them in. I think that's really beyond the scope of that position.
But I do think
that the
beyond
funny thing,
budget,
Heidi, the funny thing about calls is they don't have to be answered. So there's no, you know, we could put call or leave call in there. I don't think that's a problem for any committee in the town because we're all supposed to be moving in the same direction.
same direction.
but it doesn't have to be answered, you know, and
No,
they
and
can be
I
called out.
agree.
on an
I
election.
agree. And then you take the fallout for not answering it.
Right.
I don't think that means telephone call. I think that means to the call. It means,
I think so too.
No, I think it means to come in and discuss it. Maybe we take
Hmm.
telephone call out or whatever. Or the
Yeah, I think
invitation.
subject to the call suggests to me that there's an expectation you come in
Right.
and you're,
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. There is.
And you don't
And I
have to
think
come in.
it should be- That's correct. And
Yeah.
if you don't come in, you suffer the consequences or.
but again, the reasonable times could be, again, what are the times that are reasonable? I mean, I think we want to see, hopefully a fostering collaborative relationship between, it's important. I mean, that's one of the issues is that, we're trying to work on is creating a closer collaboration with the town. So,
Right.
so I mean, there is that, and that should be, but we all should be working for what, for the best of, our children are a large part of our town. We're the biggest employer, so I think we should all be working for, common goals. And again, but if you have a town, again, it's reasonable time is kind of the critical piece. And I don't know, maybe we need to pull that out a little bit more, but because we have reasonable people now, but it used
Oh, but that's not the point. You may not have reasonable people going forward. So you got to have some kind of.
no, I understand that. So I'm saying that's where I'm struck, again, but can I exert my judgment as the school committee say like, no, coming in and talk about sex ed, that's not reasonable. So therefore I'm
I
going to say no.
Well, I agree with Chris then. You make the call, somebody can have you come in, select board or administrator, and if you don't come in.
I think you come in and you say why it's not appropriate. I think you
Sorry?
come in. I think it's appropriate to expect that you come in and say, this is not in your wheelhouse. And we just want to let you know.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do what we want to do, but then you do have somebody that has the ability to bring an issue to the floor by trying to stage a communication, which in most cases, you'll probably be able to work out without creating a problem. But, if you don't want to come because you don't agree, then that's fine. Suffer the consequence.
Mhm.
So I think we keep it in there
Okay.
and,
Sean McDonald doesn't, I don't know what he wants to say.
oh, Sean, sorry, point of information, Sean.
What if, I mean, just, I'm spitballing here. What if it was to say this, coordination? Notwithstanding their election by the voters for the purpose of coordinating the work of all town agencies, all boards and committees in this section, all boards and committees in town shall be subject to the call of the select board for consultation, conference, and discussion on any matter related to their respective offices or multiple bodies.
Good. Wow.
That's
what are
good.
you doing? You're just striking town administrator, right? Is that what you're doing?
And at all reasonable times,
But are you including the town administrator or taking that out?
taking them out. That way we eliminate any kind of a rogue town administrator.
I
Put
agree
it
with
on-
that. And it's also not the role of the town administrator. I agree with that. It's the role of the select board.
This goes
Right.
back to a question you brought up earlier, Sean, where, they kind of tie in together. So what's the authority of the select board? So here, the way it's worded and the way you want to reword it, they're both the same, but does the select board have power and authority over these boards or not? So, we have multiple discussions where, I hear, no, the select board doesn't have the power. They just work closely. Well, then kind of what's the point, just in
Well-
general of
Well,
this
this-
section?
By what was just said, we'll just make sure that it's in the charter that, the boards shall work together for the betterment of the town.
Mhm.
That's all. I mean, it doesn't say that what frequency it is or when it is, but when the select board say we'd like to meet with you, you will meet with the select board to discuss things related to the town.
So I'm just saying, so, in the future, there's an issue. The school committee is doing something, the select board doesn't like it. Okay, hey, the charter says the select board can call the school committee in, bring them in. Hey,
Mhm.
school committee, we don't like this. Okay, well, we're here, tough. You have no authority.
Right,
So then,
Okay, fine.
that's fine. That's what
I don't have a
happens.
problem with that.
That's
And then
fine.
I'll be more than happy to go on a bully bull pit and say, look, we tried to discuss We just tried to discuss with the school committee what they wanted to, what they're doing. They refused to do it. Voters, this is what your school committee is doing.
I agree
Have
with
at it.
you 100%, Sean, 100% on that one. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
Can I muddy the water a little bit?
Sure, why not?
You can try.
All right, so let's tie together elected and appointed on this issue. You've got now an appointed planning board chairman. And select board doesn't like the way that he is working the master plan or whatever the issue is. They call before the select board for the chairman multiple times, and they're in disagreement, doesn't show. There's a difference now between appointed versus elected because of a termination clause, correct? Is the appointed member who's not showing up at the call of the select board subject to termination, dereliction of duty, or whatever other language is in this document, versus the elected official who can say, pound tar, I'll see you in 3-5 years.
Yeah, I think that's the system we have. So that's
Right
fine.
right now, this is talking about elected. This does not,
Right. So
oddly
so-
enough, I'm looking right now at section 4. Oddly enough, doesn't appear to be duplicative language for appointed positions.
Aren't we thinking, I mean, and again, I know that we're dealing with this right in front of us, but to Chris's point, like we had said that if we were moving these positions to appointed, that list and the ones that we're thinking of, that part of the responsibility would be that they have to come and, report to the school, to the muddled select board with, updates. And so that would be a mandated part. Again, in the way that we were, obviously it's not finalized, but that was part of the thinking, which would bring up these issues.
Right, so
I
I
think
think we need to add under each section for the appointed board, I think we need to add at least similar language to this and more based on what Terry said earlier about requiring them to report and have evaluations done by
Yes,
them.
I agree.
Chris, I'm just thinking about what you said, and I'm thinking about the zoning board of appeals and the fact that there have been a couple of decisions made by them in recent years that people haven't been thrilled with. I think they're asked to come and have a meeting with the select board at one point to talk about what their reasoning is, but I think in a case like that, there would have to be some language in there about what the select board would have to go through to terminate somebody. And if somebody's coming in under their role and they're doing their job and it's just disagreement, that's just too bad. I don't think that could be the reason. We'd have to have something else in there that respected the role and the responsibility of the committee, but also built in, because I really think there's a benefit to appointing people who are interested but don't want to collect signatures. And I think that's kind of across the board. I think that would be a great thing, and we could get more diversity on our committees than we have right now. But it's a good point. I think we'd have to think about how we write out the process for removing somebody from the committee.
Yeah, and Teresa, just to piggyback on that, because I do think that whole idea of the power grab, and that whether it's, perception, is that we need to make sure that we're answering that. And this would be an important way to do that. So
it would
let's get this
almost need to
language.
be like a just cause clause or something in there that says there has to be a reason.
Yeah, because what I don't want to start is a revolving door. You get 3 members on the select board who are in lockstep on a particular issue. And, next chairman's up, he doesn't agree, he's out, next chairman's up, he's,
Right.
so that can
Right.
happen.
Right.
Hope it doesn't, but.
No, and then that goes on to the ability of the select board to know what the hell they're doing. And it
Right.
goes right to the voters. The voters will see that is the select board trying to exert control.
Mhm.
But what's the term of the select board?
3 years.
3?
So for the school committee as well.
The only 5-year term is the planning board. Everybody else is
I
3.
would disagree. I think in terms of voters seeing that it's some kind of power grab, I think the select board and the town government should be requiring people to justify their actions on these various boards, whether elected or appointed. And one of the ways to do that is discuss what they're doing on some kind of schedule. So I don't.
No,
I don't
and a
see
good
it as a
example is the
problem.
finance committee and the select board. The select board can't tell the finance committee what to do, but the finance committee has practices in place where they come in and communicate and talk about what their reasoning is, why they came to the recommendations that they do. And it
Mhm.
works, that works.
I
I
wish
think-
that the
I think-
language was
I think-
more inclusive so that any board could ask, the select board could ask any board and any board could ask the select board, can we meet and talk about this situation? Because I'm thinking not just budget issues in school committee, but it could be a school security issue that, we need to talk about something because this is going to have some ramifications.
I agree. I agree.
or-
It should be both. It should be both ways.
I mean, the most prime example, okay, is the zoning board. Here you have, going before town meeting, a zoning article to put in a overlay district over on Route 6.
Yeah.
Now you have the same people who are looking to make that overlay district, the sponsors, the planning board with the sponsors, but the impetus for it is this group of people, who are also now filing a use zone variance with the zoning board of appeals. The zoning board of appeals grants them the use variance before town meeting even voted on it. So that is a complete disconnect from that board as to what the tenor of the town is going. Because if they had waited for that use variance, found out that that town meeting said no, then they should have denied the use variance instead of giving it. And to be honest with you, I didn't find out about the use variance until several weeks after town meeting. Then somebody said, hey, that they went before the zoning board and got a use variance? Then what the hell was the point of us going to town meeting?
Wasn't it the night before or something too?
Something like that, yeah.
Mhm.
And complete disconnect, complete. And now you have a situation somewhat similar where you have the select board dead set against a rezoning for agricultural growing, and yet you have, the board like, oh man, we should talk to this board, we should talk to this board, we should talk. The select board doesn't want it. The people in the area don't want it. It's stuff like this that kind of just makes you want to go, what?
Well, ultimately, Sean, you don't, I think the goal of all of this is not to usurp the power of the people of the town, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, it can
But that's what
argument
that
can be made
that's what
that
that use variance was. That was a complete
usurp
usurpation
the power,
of the
exactly,
discussion of the people.
right.
Gone. Made by 3 appointed officials,
Mhm.
not elected, appointed.
But I think that
I
isn't the
do.
zoning board required to allow things that maybe are not popular but are legal, and there's a good reason? I'm not.
No,
I'm
they are
an
not
expert
required to
on-
give a variance. In fact, if anybody would illegally challenge a variance, you could never win because.
Well, I
the
think about affordable housing. If
standards
affordable
giving a
housing
variance
is on the
is-
ballot, I don't think it's very popular, but I think that it's something that should be allowed. I just thought of that as an example.
Heidi, have you got
Yes.
any
The
thoughts?
issues
We're gonna end
because
this
the
meeting.
ZBA granting variances.
Yes,
I got some other stuff I gotta do.
yes.
Any
In fact,
thought-
I'm going to propose that we, with C, we're rewording that, and with F, town officials will mean all committees, elected committees, including school committee. And Sean McDonald, would you forward that wording that you had to?
Oh God, I didn't even write it down.
Oh,
Okay, yeah,
I
well,
got it. I got it.
okay. Take off a recording.
Okay.
I made the
And we
change
will,
already.
we will stop here for today because we're beyond 12:30 even. So our next meeting is scheduled for November 9th, which
What
is
time?
a Wednesday, 11 a.m.
Okay,
Who said what time?
I did.
11 a.m., November 9th.
11.
We will pick up at section 3-1H, which is the next,
11 o'clock, everybody, hear that? 11 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Nobody laughed. I said that in jest, guys.
oh, tough crowd.
There
tough
was a
crowd.
lot of confusion back and forth. We kept changing times, but we all know it's 11.
I
Sorry,
get
what was
that.
the next meeting? The 9th?
November 9th, 11
At
a.m.
12. At 12. No, 11.
11.
Don't. And we will pick up with 3-H. And we will have some other information from potentially Jeff Nutting. And we will sally forth,
Very good. 11 a.m.
11 a.m. I like your
So
screen.
Heidi,
Yes,
just to clarify one thing.
yes.
We're looking to transfer from elected positions to appointed. There are no appointed positions that we're looking to make elected, correct?
I don't believe so.
All right.
I don't believe so. Again, I think if we can sell to town meeting, the fact that we want people with a specific skill set to serve on these boards, and we want them not to be politicians, maybe we'll have more interest.
We
And
did
maybe-
though, we did talk about the clerk, even though the town voted against it. Do we think that that should be an appointed position? I think that that's worth reconsidering, because I think most of the committees, I know the finance committee did, they looked at all of the data on that and recommended that it be appointed.
That certainly is a position that needs a specific skill set.
Yep, I agree.
I just
made
was
a-
following up on Chris's question.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, Brian. Seconded by,
Second,
Second.
thank you, Teresa. All right. All in favor? Heidi, yes. Terry,
yes.
Sean McDonald,
Yes.
Steve Mello,
Yes.
Chris O'Neill,
Yes.
Sean, I'm gonna call you. You have a minute?
Brian
Me,
O'Hare,
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mary Waite.
Yes.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.